Christmas Eve, 1945. The Sodder family home in Fayetteville, West Virginia, was filled with the warmth of holiday cheer. 9 of George and Jenny Sodder's 10 children were home, decorating, laughing, and preparing for Christmas morning. By midnight, the stockings were hung, the lights were dimmed, and the children drifted off to sleep. But by dawn, everything had changed. A fire tore through the Sodder home in the early hours of December 25th. Flames engulfed the wooden structure with terrifying speed. George, Jenny, and 4 of their children escaped, but 5 never emerged. Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny Jr., and Betty, aged 5 to 14, were believed to have perished inside. And yet, when the fire was finally extinguished, there were no bodies, no bones, no remains at all. Just ash, rubble, and silence, authorities declared. The children dead, consumed completely by the blaze, but the Sodders refused to believe it. They insisted the fire was no accident, and that their missing children had not died that night, but had been taken. In the years that followed, strange clues surfaced. Witnesses claimed to have seen the children alive, days and even years after the fire. Letters arrived with mysterious photographs. A billboard on Route 16 displayed their faces for decades, a haunting reminder of a mystery that refused to die. The Sodder fire became one of America's most chilling unsolved cases. Was it a tragic accident, a kidnapping, or something far darker? Why did the fire burn so fast? Why were the remains missing? And who were the shadowy figures who seemed to know more than they should? Tonight, we peel back the ashes of this haunting case. We'll retrace the night of the fire, follow the Sodders' desperate search for answers, examine the bizarre evidence, and confront the possibility that 5 children didn't vanish into flames, but into the shadows of a conspiracy that has never been explained. This is not just a story of fire. It's a story of fear, secrets, and the unanswered cries of children who may still be out there. Welcome to the Sodder Children Mystery, the fire that never explained itself. Before the fire, the Sodders were like any hardworking American family. George and Jenny Sodder, Italian immigrants, had built a good life in Fayetteville, West Virginia. George ran a successful trucking business, and their 10 children filled their home with laughter and chaos. But beneath that picture of the American dream, there were tensions. George was outspoken about politics. He fiercely opposed Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy, and wasn't afraid to say so publicly. This made him enemies in the tight-knit Italian immigrant community. Some even threatened him directly. The Sodder home itself stood tall, a 2-story frame house filled with warmth. That Christmas Eve of 1945 was supposed to be one of joy. The older children stayed up late, playing with gifts and decorating. At 10 p.m., Jenny sent most of them to bed, though 5 begged to stay up a little longer. She agreed, leaving the Christmas lights on. Jenny would later recall how peaceful it all seemed when she went upstairs. But within hours, their lives would shatter, and the peace would never return. At 12:30 a.m., Jenny awoke to the sound of the telephone. A woman's voice asked for someone Jenny didn't know, then laughed strangely before hanging up. Troubled, Jenny noticed all the lights still on and the curtains open, unusual for her children. She assumed they had fallen asleep and went back to bed by 1 a.m. Jenny awoke again, this time to a loud thud on the roof, followed by the smell of smoke. Flames had erupted in the house. She screamed for her husband and children. Chaos erupted. George, Jenny, and 4 of the children escaped. But the staircase to the upstairs bedrooms was already engulfed in flames. George smashed a window, slicing his arm, but the smoke was too thick. He tried to climb a ladder to the 2nd floor, but the ladder, which always rested against the house, was missing. He tried to start his trucks to use them as platforms, but mysteriously, neither would start, though they'd worked perfectly the day before. The fire spread too quickly. In less than an hour, The Sodder home collapsed into ashes. The 5 children, Morris, Martha, Louis, Jenny Jr., and Betty, were gone, or were they? When daylight came, firefighters and neighbors sifted through the rubble, but there were no bodies, not a single bone, not a single trace of 5 children, supposedly consumed by fire. Experts later testified that even in house fires, bones survive. The Sodders consulted cremation specialists who said human bones do not burn completely at house fire temperatures. Even after 2 hours, this fire lasted less than 45 minutes. So where were the remains? Jenny refused to believe her children had burned. She conducted her own experiments, burning animal bones in ovens. Each time, fragments remained. The absence of remains haunted her. Other strange details emerged. The missing ladder was later found tossed in a ditch. Witnesses recalled seeing strange men watching the Sodder home days earlier. A woman claimed she saw the children peering out of a passing car during the fire. A motel worker insisted she had seen them the next morning to George and Jenny. The evidence was clear. Their children had not died in the fire. They had been taken. The official ruling declared the fire accidental, caused by faulty wiring. But George wasn't convinced. He had recently had the wiring checked and approved by the power company. How could it suddenly spark a blaze so destructive? The family's suspicions deepened when they recalled the phone call that night, the strange laughter, and Jenny's memory of hearing something hit the roof. Could it have been a firebomb? Neighbors recalled seeing a man with a block and tackle stealing parts from George's trucks the night of the fire, perhaps explaining why they failed to start. Others claimed they saw strangers parked along the highway, watching as the fire raged. Not to the Sodders, it was no accident. It was arson, and worse, a cover for kidnapping. But who would commit such a crime, and why? George's enemies, angered by his anti-Mussolini stance, seemed a possibility. Or perhaps it was something more personal: revenge, greed, or a plot involving people closer than anyone suspected. The flames had destroyed the Sodder home, but they had also ignited a mystery far larger than the fire itself. For years the Sodders pursued every lead. They hired private investigators, followed rumors, and scoured the country. Sightings came from far and wide. A bus driver claimed he saw the children watching the fire. A woman in Charleston reported seeing them a week later. Soldiers returning from Italy whispered of kidnapped children taken overseas. In 1947, the Sodders erected a massive billboard on Route 16 near their home. It bore the faces of the 5 missing children with a simple plea for answers. For nearly 40 years, that billboard loomed over the highway, a haunting reminder of a mystery unsolved. Then, in 1968, a chilling letter arrived. Inside was a photograph of a young man in his 20s, resembling Louis Sodder. On the back, scrawled words read, "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, Illa boys." A 90,132 or 35. The cryptic message reignited the family's hope, but also their torment. Was this proof their children lived, or was it a cruel hoax? The FBI refused to investigate further, calling the case cold. But to George and Jenny, the mystery was still burning. George and Jenny spent the rest of their lives searching. They never rebuilt their home, instead turning the site into a memorial garden. Jenny wore black until her death in 1989, mourning children she never accepted as dead. The Sodder children mystery lived on in whispers and theories. Some believed they were kidnapped in a plot tied to George's political enemies. Others believed they died in the fire, and grief blinded the family to the truth. And some think the truth lies in a web of conspiracy covered up by authorities, who refused to investigate properly. But no bodies were ever found. No definitive evidence surfaced. The mystery remains unsolved to this day. The Sodder fire was supposed to be a tragedy explained by chance, an accident on a cold Christmas night, but the story has never fit neatly into that box. 5 children went to sleep and never came back, and the silence of their absence has screamed louder than the flames ever did. Was it truly an accident? Did faulty wiring spark a blaze that destroyed all traces of 5 young lives? Or was it something darker, a kidnapping cloaked in fire, a plot carried out under the cover of night, leaving behind nothing but ash and endless questions? For George and Jenny Sodder, it was never over. They searched until their final days, clinging to every rumor, every lead, every shadow of hope. Jenny's black dresses, George's endless road trips chasing whispers of sightings, and the towering billboard along Route 16 all became symbols of a grief that refused to rest. What makes this case so haunting is not just the mystery itself, but the cruelty of its uncertainty. Closure never came. The Sodders lived in a twilight world between belief and doubt, between hope and despair. They never buried their children because they never accepted they were gone. Theories still swirl today. Some believe the children perished in the fire, their remains somehow lost to time and error. Others see too many coincidences: the missing ladder, the dead trucks, the strange men watching, the laughter on the midnight call. Some point to the political enemies George had made, insisting the fire was no accident, but revenge. And then there are those who believe the children lived, taken far from Fayetteville, perhaps never even knowing their true identities. The photo that arrived decades later, labeled as Louis, remains one of the most chilling artifacts in the case. Was it a cruel hoax, or the truth trying to break through the silence? We may never know. What we do know is that the Sodder fire remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries, a story that has refused to die, because too much about it doesn't make sense. Fires leave remains. Bones survive heat. Children do not simply vanish into smoke. Perhaps the true curse of this story is not the fire itself, but the void it left behind, a void filled with theories, conspiracies, and sorrow, a void where the voices of 5 children should have been. So tonight, as we close this story, I'll leave you with one question. What do you believe happened to the Sodder children? Did they vanish in flames, or into the shadows of a secret that was never meant to be uncovered? Tell me your theory in the comments below, and if you want more stories like this, mysteries that refuse to die, legends that still haunt American history, and dark secrets that remain unexplained, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell, because there are more stories waiting, stories that burn just as fiercely as this one. This has been the Sodder Children Mystery, the fire that never explained itself. Until next time, remember, history doesn't always leave answers. Sometimes it leaves only questions.